horns, and they were all arranged in a big circle, which you will know about if you've read Looking for Alaska, because I pretty much just copied the physical place down and made it the setting of the book. It's a lot easier to do it that way, and I was starting out as a novelist, so that's what I thought I would do. There were two things about attending Springs that were so vitally important to me in terms of my career. The first was my friends. I was blessed to have really, really smart friends, and I think that that is hugely important in life. You are very lucky if you get smart friends in this world, and y'all are all very lucky, sort of by definition, because our community tends to attract thoughtful, intellectually engaged people, which we're so grateful for. So we hope that you make friends tonight, one way or another. Don't be afraid to be like, ah, you seem nice. The most important thing for me was the quality of instruction that I received here. I was a terrible student at Indian Springs, and I have to tell you that because some of my teachers are here, and if I didn't tell you, they would. I was a particularly poor student in my junior year of high school. In my senior year, my GPA went up a lot, but my junior year, I basically failed my English class, and I came very close to failing a number of my other classes. And I was very, very lucky to have teachers who didn't give up on me, which is the nicest thing that a teacher can do for you. I was not a particularly promising student. I did not show any degree of, it wasn't like they were like, oh, he has so much potential. I showed no potential whatsoever. But they didn't give up on me, and they believed that I could be a better student, and they believed that I could be a better engaged citizen of the world. It wasn't just, I mean, it's part of Indian Springs' rhetoric, but it's also true. It's not just about school while you're here. It's about becoming a better informed, more engaged person. And I had these teachers who wouldn't quit on me even when I tried to get them to quit on me. And of course, that was what I was desperate for. I was desperate for them to push me and to believe in me in ways that I didn't believe in myself. And it was teachers here who were the first people to tell me that I could write. And it was teachers here who were the first people to tell me that I wasn't an idiot just because I acted like an idiot. And that was really hugely influential in my life. And I think it's also had a big influence in the way I write about adults and their relationships with teenagers. Sort of the typical young adult novel idea is that adults are sort of negative forces in the lives of teenagers, because of course like lots of teenagers, including myself, experience adults as negative forces in their lives. But the truth is a lot more complicated. The truth is that the adults in your lives almost always have what they think is your best interest at your heart, and they have an awareness that you are not an adult in a way that definitionally you cannot. So the other thing that I started to grapple with when I was a student at Indian Springs was loss and suffering and how it makes its way through our lives. There's a quote late in The Fault in Our Stars, this is not a spoiler, in which it's a famous quote if you're Catholic. This young woman named Antonia Mayo, who may someday become a saint, even though she only lived to be 7, told her father, pain is like fabric, the stronger it's made, the stronger it's made, the stronger it holds. And I learned that quote when I was in high school, and I remember thinking about it ever since, and never had a way to use it until I got to The Fault in Our Stars. But I wanted to write a book about loss and absence and the fear that we all have of oblivion, of being forgotten, of not having a life that's significant or interesting or important. And I think a lot of the reason that we have this fear is because we have this weird sense of heroism and what constitutes a good life, what constitutes a well-lived life. I think Hank is being funny. And a lot of that comes from the traditional epics of our time, which if you go to Springs, you'll read in school, or even if you don't, you'll probably read in school, like the Odyssey, let's really quickly just look at the Odyssey, what it's about for those of you who haven't read it. Great, I'm going to spoil it for you. It doesn't affect the quality of the reading experience. Dude goes to war, does a great job, top-notch warring, and then takes him a really long time to come home. And then while he's trying to come home, a bunch of things happen, slow him down, finally gets home, and his wife, there weren't like text messages, 3,500 years ago. So his wife, there's a bunch of suitors soothing his wife. And he's mad. I mean, anybody would be mad. On the other hand, it did take him a long time to get home, and she had no reason not to believe that he wasn't dead, and neither did the suitors. So the appropriate response is to be like, hey, it's me, Odysseus, y'all need to head out. But instead, the palace floor is coarse with blood, and everybody gets killed, and that's your happily ever after ending. And a lot of times, I think that's still the way that we imagine heroism. Gus gives Hazel this novelization of a video game, which Hazel really enjoys, but they made a character who has 118 people and 221 pages, and then, makes this grand sacrifice on behalf of his comrades, and that's generally the way that our romantic epics are written. They're about war, or they're about politics, or they're about, these big family strife things like Romeo and Juliet. And I wanted to write a little epic love story. I wanted to write a small epic romance not about those big forces, but about the little forces that shape almost all of our lives. And the thing that circumscribes life for almost all of us is not war, but disease. And so I wanted to write about that and the role that illness plays, not just in the lives of the sick, but in the lives of everybody. And in doing so, try to write about what constitutes a heroic or well-lived life. And answer the question, is it possible to have a well-lived life where you don't live to be 92? Like my grandfather died a few weeks ago. And after his death, so many people came up to me and said, your grandfather lived a long, full life, a good life. And that's very, very true. But lots of people don't get to live to be 92. And the question I had when I started writing this novel is it possible to have a good, full, well-lived life if you don't get that life expectancy that we'd all like? Is it possible to have a heroic life even if you don't get to either live to be old or get to jump on a grenade to save your buddies? Because the truth of it for almost all of us is that we're going to have to find our heroism and our well-lived lives in very small little ways along the way we go. And it's going to be quiet, and it's not going to be in the newspapers, it's going to be in the little ways we have of taking care of each other and taking care of ourselves. And so that was really the initial inspiration for The Fault in Our Stars. I'm going to talk more about the book during a question and answer session that will come after Hank's set. I don't even know if Hank is ready for me, though. I'm right here. Oh. He is! So on that topic of how to have a heroic life and video game epics, here's my brother Hank Green.